So sometimes what draws me to a person that I stay connected to in my world or in my practice of learning about working with people as I continue on that path of continuing to, I guess you could say, develop my expertise in working with folks in different modalities is when I met Nikki West. Her and I were in a mastermind group where I actually met with women all over the world who work on their business, and they work on people do amazing things, right? It's kind of fascinating how people put their lives together, how they work, all the different formats and the ways that they create business. It's fascinating and creative, and I always am just so in awe of the people that I meet. And one of them was Nikki West. And one of the things that draws me to her is her voice. So amazing that she's a voice coach, that she was an actress. Um, and I just found that sometimes these aspects of people can be incredibly healing and draw you in. I was reminded to contact Nikki again to do this interview because she had done a visualization meditation, which I've included here, which is just a very beginning thought about just opening up your voice, opening up your, um, what would we call it? The third chakra, the voice, right? And whether, is it the third? I always count backwards. Um, Anyways, the throat chakra, and to really relax that so that you can speak your truth and you can actually come into relaxation around yourself and what you speak about. One of the other things that she talked about is that believing in slowing down. And she has stopped being so much online and in social media. Um, and I know that people are struggling with the amount of stimulation that they get from the outside world. So I was really happy with the kind of confidence that she spoke about this, is like slowing down, just believing who comes to you, know that you have a healing job to do in the world, and the people that need you will find you. I love that thought because I also think if there is a person who's seeking healing, they're going to find the right people too to get that healing from. So there's just a very nice energy with Nikki, the way she approaches her clients, her life, herself, her day, and trying to kind of come from the place of her own balance and work-life balance to serve people with that groundedness, with that centeredness. It's a very important thought. I hope you enjoy the interview as much as I did. So, hi, Nikki. I had a really great idea about how to start talking to you tonight. And it was based on one of the things that drew me to reach out to you, which was this guided
Mm.
imagery. And so I thought, because one of the reasons why I feel like I'm so drawn to your work is actually because of your voice. So it's so perfect that you work with voice. And so I wondered if you could just set the tone and even give us like 1 or 2 minutes of just grounding around using one's voice. And so this is like,
Mm.
people come to you to like get better at speaking. And so we're in a conversation, we know each other and have done this before, but like just to see if we start that way, if it really switches the quality of how we speak to each other.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love that idea. Okay, great. I'll just introduce myself quickly. So I'm Nikki and I'm based in Australia and I work with people really on embodying their expression. So whether that's through voice or movement, sound, and also coaching. So yeah, and we've known each other for a few years now, haven't we, Susan?
Yes. I'd say like
That's so
six
great.
or seven. I don't know how that happened, but
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it was 2018. Yeah, yeah. It was through Tanya Geisler, who's an amazing coach. So yeah, that was where it was through. So let's start then. Let's begin. How I would always begin is just to really arrive in the space that we're in. So you can take a moment. You can close your eyes if you like. You can keep them open, whatever feels
Mhm.
comfortable for you.
Mhm.
And just give yourself a moment, really feel the connection between your sit bones and the support beneath you. So whether that's a chair or the ground, or you may even be outside. And just notice that support. Just really allow yourself to feel that support through the sit bones. You can rest your hands either onto your lap or whatever's comfortable. And then noticing the sounds around you, anything around you, any different sounds. Really bringing yourself into this moment. Noticing your breath, the quality of your breath. See if you can feel a sense of your breath just gently into your lower belly as it releases, and then the lower belly as it softens back. So as you inhale, just feel the lower belly, the ribs releasing, the lungs expanding. And as you exhale, just feel the air slowly softening back and your whole body is beginning to let go. Relaxing and softening the jaw, face, throat, chest, and belly. And just take 2 more breaths. And then if you've had your eyes closed, just slowly opening and coming into this moment.
Great. I was thinking about, how to talk with you around the work that you do with clients. And I think one of the biggest things is like how we draw clients to us, right? And how we can hold space for them. So I wondered if you were noticing in your work with people, like what people are really needing these days from you.
Yeah.
And I know people come in all different modalities, so you might talk about it
Yeah.
generally or more specifically, like where you see where it's more noticeable what it is, the need of the client.
Absolutely. Well, I think, we have been pretty bombarded the last few years, particularly. And for some people, that was going on, different things were going on beforehand as well. Of course, life just didn't begin, during the time of COVID and social uprising. And so I think people have been so bombarded and so overwhelmed with everything that we're really needing to simplify. And I don't know if everyone's able to tap into that yet, where rather than trying to do everything and be everywhere, it feels like it's coming back to smaller communities in a way. And it feels like it's coming back to really what is it that you need specifically. So I think as a practitioner, you've got to be true. You've got to be honest with who you are and what you can offer. I think that's really important as well. There may have been, certainly in the coaching world, I've been coming through more embodiment work, so through teaching yoga for 20 years and before that through acting. So studying acting, and I'm working as an actor, and then before that was through dance. So I've always come at it through a more kind of embodied aspect or approach, let's say. And I think that's needed. I actually think that's really needed now. I think we've been so taken out of ourselves in so many different ways. And there's a lot that people have been dealing with emotionally, grief, trauma, as a lot of trauma's been coming back up. I think people are needing some centering and some stability and some real kind of grounding, embodied practices. I mean, I'm going to have that perspective anyway, because that's what I do, and that's what I find really works. And I find that using our voice as well is something that is so important in that, because our voice is part of our body. So, really embodying that as well is important. I think people are wanting to be more honest and more truthful and have conversations have deeper conversations as well. So
Mhm.
that's a little bit of what I'm finding. What are you finding? How are you,
Yeah, I mean, I think
you
that
know?
resonates a lot with what I'm finding too is the approach to, well, firstly, the embodied work that you do. And I'm glad that you started us off that way because I think part of part of being receptive to even listening to how people work or even to think about what kind of work do I want to go after? What do I really need? Is to really listening to yourself, right? And getting yourself in these grounded spots where you can even register. And I think we have been as a society so bombarded. I mean, we met pre-COVID. We had some contact during that time, you know, and I think we did another interview during that time as well. So I think some of that was things have changed and shifted a lot since I mean, for me, how I worked in my, all in person to now all virtual. And the thought of, you know, firstly, how amazing some of that was, and then um how shocking that was to the nervous system, right? So it's just interesting to see that shifts and how people adapted to things and what people are needing now, I think, is definitely community and places where they can get fed and kind of de-escalate their nervous system and find ways of just being more centered and grounded. And I love the idea about like thinking about the quality of voice. I know that, and probably you know that too, is that people, when you do the work of helping people emotionally and physically and um spiritually, that people are drawn to you for certain reasons. Maybe it's like what you say or how you appear or how you talk about things. And for you also just like teaching these certain practices. And so I wonder, like when you're working with somebody, um,
Yeah.
how do you suss out, and maybe you have certain tools that you automatically do with folks when you first meet them, or maybe maybe people come to you because they know you're doing a certain thing, but what would you say is a draw that your clients have towards you specifically?
Oh,
You
hard to say from the client perspective, you know.
probably have
That's what
hear
I've been
feedback though,
told.
or get a sense of it. It's-
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think it's I think it's partly the energy and the holding space. I've been told a lot. They feel, I hesitate to use the word safe because it's relative, but as safe a space as possible. And generosity, I think as well, of presence, of being there, which is our job. I feel, it's our job to be completely present with our clients. So I think that, and probably just, I'm kind of who I am. I'm not kind of putting anything on. I'm pretty honest, and without being, I'm holding space, obviously. So I'm in a role, but I'm honest with who I am. So I think they appreciate that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's
And then for
and I think
yourself,
what
like
you
how do you what do you feel like you've been doing differently for yourself to be able to continue to do the work, especially in this
yeah
bombarded world that we live
yeah
in?
yeah yeah. Well, coming back to a little bit before, I think that more regulation is needed generally, and that's what I've been working a lot more on. And even though we work on regulation, we're lifelong, I know you are as well, lifelong learner and in personal development from the age of 16 kind of thing. So it's, we've been constantly working on these things. There's still always more shifts and realignments that need to happen in order to regulate with the world as it is now and within yourself. So it's centered. And one thing you were saying as well just before about shifting, so that shift, yes, very much from outside. I was all in person before COVID, and then I went obviously completely online during that time for about a year, but then I started my in-person class back again. But I changed it, so it's an outdoor class, and I kept that going, and that's really for the community as well, and it's something that connects me to the community in person So I run a weekly class, and it's outside, beautiful space. I love it who come, just very regular clients. It feels very joyful and easeful. So I really wanted to make that shift as well around my work and how I was relating to my work. So before, the work would really, and even through COVID to an extent, but before, the work was really taking first place. And I feel that where I am in my life now, it needs to come into balance with all of the aspects of my life. So I think that has been a shift and a change as well. I've had like regular coaching through that time as well with Tanya Geisler, and that's been very steadying. And she's someone who can help bring me back to my truth and my center, and I think that's very important. As a teacher, a facilitator, a leader in your own space yourself, no, I really think you need someone to hold that space for you as well. So I think that's been a really important aspect that I
Mm-hmm.
prioritized. Before that, there was always teachers in the sense of yoga, embodiment, that kind of work. But yeah, to actually have a specific coach was really important for me. Am I answering your question, or was
Yeah, no,
there was
totally.
there?
It is. I mean, it's like it's both things. It's like having a place where you can reflect on your own process,
Yeah.
and then finding ways that you do consistently like meet community, since there's a big community
Yeah.
need, right? And then also just like really thinking and being thoughtful about how you hold space with people, knowing that you're a trained
Yes.
professional, of course, so that there's that aspect of it, that you're playing a role, but also just I mean, I always think about that too, is how I hold space for people and all the different things that they might be going through, and being receptive to them, and trying to
Yeah.
figure out like generosity of spirit, like where does this client need me to go? And I think it's so funny because maybe because we've had so many shifts externally, like what I don't know about you, but I know for me, I've gotten really clear about what I do now, even though I'm constantly learning and evolving and adding things to how I work. I feel like I've gotten very clear about how important it is, and how much I'm like very committed to who I'm serving and how I'm serving people, because I
Yes.
do feel like there's the need. And I think the more you work, the more you see it, and the more you hone into it, and go directly towards it, right, what people are needing.
Yeah.
So if you have to shift and
Yeah.
change or adjust, I'm sure like if you have a class of all the people that have known you for X amount of years, and then you have a class with all new people, then the way that you run that class is going to be very different. um
Absolutely.
and also you can kind of read a little bit more the energy of the people that better, right? um or even the people
Yeah.
that you don't know better. You're like, okay, I can see that
Yeah.
there's hesitation or lack of confidence, or they need more guiding, or that kind of stuff. So I feel like because there's been so many external distractors, that it's made me much clearer about what I'm doing, especially because virtually, the work is harder. It's like you have to push
Such
to
a
get the
different.
queuing more than one of my colleagues was saying, that they did some in-person work, visiting the Bay Area. They were able to be there and see their clients in
Mm.
person because they moved out of the area. And it was so much easier for them because they had all the queuing right there. It was so much easier to
You can
read the
read
energy
everything.
and figure out how to
Yeah.
be receptive to what was going on. Whereas like we're
Yeah.
looking for cues online and reading like an environment really, and a person. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, yes, definitely. I think the connection piece is super important. Connection with ourselves and who we are, and then connection with the clients as well, of course. So really finding that connection, and even if it's a group that I don't know, that I go and teach as well, I'll always have a chat with them beforehand. I'll always have like a little, just I'll get a feel as to what they may need, where they may be at, and it's definitely gets easier to do that the more experience you have, of course. So it's sort of, it gets faster and faster, and you can read things, yeah, much more easily. But I definitely do that as well as online. And even if someone's going to join online, we'll have a chat beforehand. I'll get to know them. There'll never be someone just appearing, and I won't know anything about them, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really important, that connection piece. I feel like I've always done that connection piece. I don't feel like that has changed, but I feel that people are definitely needing and appreciating that more. At the same time, they've got a lot of choice. There's a lot of choice out there now. So I think another element that comes in, actually, it's part of my work, which is discernment. So it's really discerning what is what is right for you to follow right now. It doesn't have to be forever, but what is, with all of the choices out there, what is going to really fulfill you the most right now, and take you to the place where you want to be. And then we have to stay open with that, of course, don't we? And flexible with that, because things change. And I think that flexibility is so important to encourage and cultivate as well, so we don't
Hmm.
get too stuck in our way, you know,
Yeah.
in our style. Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah,
wondering too,
definitely.
like when you do your voice coaching work, um, what do you read about the voice? I mean, do you read the voice? Like, do you hear the voice and try to get people to be more, I don't know, connected to their voice somehow, so that they're very aware of
Mm,
how they are coming across? And I'm not
yeah.
sure. So
I find
explain it a
it's,
little bit more of how that. I mean, I know you probably read
mm,
people in all different ways, and what I'm talking about is reading
yeah,
energy, reading
sure.
what people are trying to develop, seeing like their
Mm,
capacity. Like you're reading a lot of things. You're a teacher, you're a coach,
mm.
you've also embodied the work yourself, so you're very like, I'm imagining kinesthetic in your approach. So
Yes, and the voice tells us a lot about someone. So where even their breathing, so how are they breathing? Is it all up here in the chest? Are they running a little bit anxiously? So that will come out in their voice. Are they a little bit depressed? That'll come out in their voice. Are they a little bit hyper? For whatever reason, that
like
will come
talking
out in their
fast or
voice.
something like that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it could be just an excitement, and that's great. There's no judgment around this as well. It's more about, just what can that tell us about the person through their voice. The other thing is that a lot of people I find are feeling disconnected from their voice, in that sense of they don't feel almost like their voice belongs to them, that it's somehow it doesn't feel a part of them. So I think that's quite a lot of the work sometimes, as to really feeling that your voice is your voice, that it is in your body, it's unique.
Hmm.
It's probably as
You
unique
mean
as you
like people
think
that
into
can't
the.
stand to hear their voice recorded or something? Like
Yeah, and
they're really
people.
separate from their voice or like surprised by it.
Yeah, there's a case of they just, yeah, there is that. They can be
Sorry
surprised by
about the
it, or
cat.
they, no, hello, beautiful. Hello, beautiful. No. Cats always come around. So yeah, no, they can be, yeah, they either maybe don't like the voice and how it sounds, or they just don't feel like it belongs to them. There's that real feeling of disconnection from their voice. And our voice is part of our body, so doing the physical work with the voice is super helpful. And using our voice, but using it in spaces and places where we're able to express ourselves, and we don't, without feeling judged, or we're going to be put down or anything like that. I think that's really important, so that you start to allow your voice to be heard, and then that to begin to be expressed as well. So it can be a mixture of, there could be stuff mental, mind wise, that's blocking, that's kind of, getting in the way, or it could be physically, it could be physically held,
Mhm.
particularly maybe too much around the abdomen. So if I go very tight here, you can kind of hear that in my voice a little bit there as well. So definitely our physicality affects our voice, our mood, our emotions affect our voice. So you can hear that often through the voice if a voice is very, very flat. And they're not, there can be that expression that we want to kind of play with and find more, just more expressiveness, with more variation and more
Uh-huh.
color and more, you know, pitch and tone. And yeah, to really use our voice as an expression that is an extension of part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, that's the journey, that's part of the journey as well. And yeah, so that's, from
And
all angles.
why did you feel like it became a focus of yours? Was that something always a focus of yours, or did you just start really feeling like that there's one way that I really want to assist people is like understanding that their connection to their voice?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely felt that my voice wasn't heard or shut down, and so many people feel this through my life, through my teenage years, which were very troublesome. And yeah, and so that was definitely a part of it. I didn't go straight into the voice work there, but I started to train as an actor. So from around 16, I'd been expelled from school actually. So I was I was like a wild a wild child. I've been expelled, and then I kind of just I had this epiphany that I really wanted to do something with my life. It was quite a powerful moment, and I just changed things around, and I started to go to drama classes and acting classes and dance classes. This was all at night because I was working in the daytime as a welder and then in a business apprenticeship. So I was working in the daytime and I was doing all of this at night. And I left school with no qualifications. So I kind of didn't have as much of a formal education because I'd missed so much of it. It wasn't that I didn't get the qualifications, I didn't even take the exams. So there was no chance of getting the qualifications. So I really wanted to, I felt that my brain was very fuzzy. I really wanted to kind of tune myself up. So I went and studied A levels, which were a higher kind of grade at that time. This was in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, in the UK at that time. So I started doing that. I'm really training myself then. I'm finding this way to express all of the, I guess, pain and emotion and unexpressed feelings and thoughts. I found a channel for that, and luckily, I'm so grateful. I'm super grateful because it was a healthy channel. It was a healthy
Yeah.
channel finally, instead
Yes.
of yeah going down the other direction, which I was definitely headed. This was a healthy channel for me to express in, and I think that's really important. Like the mental health aspect. I grew up with, my mom had a lot of mental health issues, and I think that's always been a part of my focus in my work. I've experienced it myself, but I've always been fortunate to have the yoga, which I started at 16 as well, and these other elements, which were the acting and the dance and the movement and sound. I never saw myself as a singer. I love singing, and I can sing, but I never saw myself as that. Even though I did sing when I was younger, but I think singing and it's moving the energy through your voice or through your body in some way, so that it is not kind of held in in you, in the cells of your body as well. So I think that's really important. It's this energy and motion
Mm.
aspect, and that's how my healing happened. And then I became an actor, worked as an actor professionally. I went to drama
Wow.
school, studied all of that. So in drama school, that was again, we're studying Alexander technique. We are embodying a character. So we're literally working with the body, with the mind, with the emotions, and it's a great way as well to again be in your own healing journey. You are in a character. So then I changed to teaching yoga. I've been doing that for 20 years, and then of course I'm more embodied in myself and working with the healing practices within yoga, breath, movement, sound, mantra. So that's really where that started to come in. And then I studied with Suzanne Sterling and off the mat work, which was more social justice, and Suzanne Sterling doing her work of a voice of change. So yeah, that was the whole journey with that. So it's evolved. I think it's evolved along. It's always been there, but it's also evolved more and more. And then I started to really see that that was really needed in the world and with clients as well. That it felt with the yoga. This is why I love doing the mantra as well, because it felt like kind of just the physical mind, emotional body, but it's kind of missed out the voice.
Mm.
And when I started to then integrate and bring voice and sounds into physical practice, it just felt more holistic. It just felt that it was included the whole of us, you know, and that's what I wanted to do. So I think that's where it came through. Yeah, yeah.
So tell
Mm.
me, like, what's the latest mantra that you've been working with? Like, even if
I
you've heard
guess.
it in your class or
Yeah.
you've heard
Mm,
people sort of, because I think a lot of times
mm.
there's themes that we kind of pick up with people, that something that they're needing to hear more of.
Yes.
I wonder if there's some one
Yes.
you've recently come across.
Do you mean it's like a Sanskrit mantra,
Yeah,
or I
whichever one.
tend
Like
to
sometimes
use
people like have
whatever,
their
whatever.
own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I tend to use sound, and I actually tend to use Om a lot. So, for example, Om is a really, like, if I want to regulate, because I still get, you know, I think even though you do this work, it doesn't mean that you as a person don't still experience anxiety or depression or anger, or all of these emotions. It's just that you're finding a way to regulate with them, you know?
Right.
So I use Om a lot, and I always like kind of begin my classes, and even if it's an unknown group, who may not appear. You know, I think we were taught, oh, just be careful going into corporates and not including the spiritual. And but I've always ignored that, and I kind of just go in. I'll temper it, but I'll at least start with that Om sound, because I find that it regulates me. It brings the room into resonance, into harmonic resonance as well. So it brings everyone together, and it can also get away, because some people giggle when they're doing arms, and I used to when I was very first, when I was 16, you know, I would giggle in relaxation and arms and things like that. um, so I think it just gets rid of all of that nervousness a little bit as well, you know. It kind of just brings everyone together. So I tend to use Om, and I do chanting with a couple of clients who I work with. They have disability, so Down syndrome and sensory disability, and yeah, so mixture. So I use a lot of chanting. They love the chanting and the yoga and the sounds mixed
Uh-huh.
together with that. So all together, and yeah, it's very regulating, very healing as well.
Well,
So
it's
yeah,
interesting
I
when
tend to
if you
use that.
start your class
Yes.
off with the mantra Om, and maybe just to describe mantra so that people know what that means if they're not familiar.
Oh, yeah. So it's a mantra, I guess, is, well, it's the seed. It's a seed syllable from Sanskrit. So from, Indian yogic tradition. So it's that seed, a mantra syllable. It's said to contain just a lot of powerful resonance, and Om is said to be really the sound that kind of covers all of the sounds of the universe. So it feels very inclusive as well in that sense. But if people don't want to do that, it doesn't have to be that sound. Humming can be very regulating as well. So just humming, there doesn't have to be anything laid on
Like
it.
humming
And
that
even just,
sound. Mhm.
yeah, or just hum. For instance, I'm a bit of an anxious driver, so which is a shame because I live in a place where I need to drive a lot. Um, so I tend to hum and sound and use sounds as I'm driving, and that keeps me kind of centered in the car and not panicking. That avoids that kind of going into panic as I'm. So the faster I go, the louder the sounds will be. Yes, if you see someone
Yes,
flying down the freeway.
humming.
Yeah, these things.
I
Humming,
love that note,
humming.
starting a class off with or humming, and then at the end of the class, you can see how people have shifted, and
Yes.
like you can hear the sound shift, you can see the body shift. So it's interesting having these practices um
Yes.
that you can visually see and auditorily see the shift, right? Or hear the shift, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yes.
what
Yeah.
keeps you doing the work that you do and doing your own work?
Mm. Mm. Oh, just this, I guess, this insatiable kind of curiosity and zest for learning and evolving and growing. And I have to say that that does include sometimes pausing and being aware of simply being, and not taking on too many things to grow and learn, because sometimes we learn the most when we're sat quietly and we're just watching some water, a body of water, a creek or a river or the ocean, or just sat under a tree or anything, or just being still and present as well, and regrouping and refueling. But I feel like, no, this is like a calling, and I feel like my life, my earlier life, laid the bedrock for this, really, through experience with my mum and my own experiences, in needing to manage this. And it feels almost when I say duty, I don't mean it as, I have to do this, but it's a human, it's like with humanity, for humanity. I feel like that's why I'm here. I'm never interested, like I don't watch any telly. I'm never interested in just kind of sitting down. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I'm definitely internally always motivated and curious to learn more and grow and evolve, and find out more about who I am and how I can be of service in the world. And I
Hmm.
think that there was a shift actually, and it was when I was acting. I think a lot of the earlier years through, because I did about three yoga teacher trainings before I started teaching yoga. So I'd already been practicing for about 11 years or something before I started teaching.
Hmm.
Longer, actually, probably longer. I think almost 14 or something. So, and I'd already done a couple of teacher trainings through that. So I think I've lost what I was going to say now. Oh, damn. Just lost what I was going to say. I'll have a drink, a cup of tea, and see if it comes back.
Yes, sometimes it's just like going back into being present, right, with yourself. I think that's one of the things
Yeah.
with being bombarded by social media or even on video is not having the pause. You know, it's so easy, it's so much easier when you're in person or when you're sitting outside to just pause, right? But it's so hard when we're all getting very programmed to be always engaged with something's going on all the time, or we can touch base with
Definitely.
all that's going on all the time. So it's like we have to actually
Yeah.
be much more conscious of, do we need to pause? Do we need to unplug?
Yes. Yes. And I do regularly. I'm not really on social media very much at all. You probably noticed. So yeah, I'm really not. Yeah. And I find that clients come through other ways, and I find that the most important thing is that I keep myself in a place of being centered, because otherwise I'm useless to my clients, to my work, to the people in my family, people around me. So I think that's the most important thing.
So what's your
So if
centering practices? What's your daily centering practices?
I guess avoiding social media,
Yes.
getting
Okay, that's a good one.
is one. No, no, I wake up and I just have quiet time with a cup of tea, and I just sit, and I listen, and I let myself kind of come to. And then I have like a green juice or whatever, and I have like a protein green juice shake thing. And then I will take the dog out for a walk. So when we go walking, I used to have like sometimes podcasts playing, but I don't now. I think that's another thing that's changed. I think there was an intensity around the beginning of COVID, just, as well, absorbing. So I tend not to now, and I just walk, and I don't see anyone where I can walk. So I'm really fortunate. I live on acreage, and then there's acreages all around me, and then there's a beautiful track that just goes through the trees, and that's what I do for about an hour. So it's probably 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. And then I come back, and then I definitely feel in my body more. And then I can either do a practice, or I'm probably going to be then going into teaching, or and then I will do formal practices, but I don't always do them at exactly the same time. So there'll always be a bookend. So the beginning in the morning, it'll either be meditation or just simply sitting, which is a form of meditation, or just simply just, not thinking of anything, maybe some writing, journaling as well. And then the evening, again, will be this kind of wind down and again, just that I have to have that quiet time just to hear my own thoughts and to sort of filter the day. So that's what works for me. If I don't get that quiet time, generally either everyone has to go to bed or I just need that moment, that time on my own. It could be half an hour or an hour. I need that moment, that time on my own, just to be with my own thoughts. So I find that they are just really easy practices that you can weave in. And then of course there's yoga practices and sound practices, but I tend to weave it through the day. So I might have clients, a couple of clients, then I'll have a gap. And I might be, making some tea or something like that, and I will be doing something in the kitchen that's moving my body or making some sounds. Whenever I'm doing the dishes, I'm always either doing chanting or I'm singing, and I'm just making up songs, and I'm really using my voice. So yeah, and then there's other practices as well that I'll always kind of weave them in throughout the day. And I've always kind of done this, even in London when I was on the tube. I would just sit. I would roughly know the time that I can sit for, and I would meditate. So I would be doing that on the tube, and I found it was such good practice because I think it's really important that again, it's this adaptability. If if we're too fixed on, we have to have this set practice at this set time, and there's nothing. I think it's important. It's important to have that at the beginning. I think that's really important to have that at the beginning where
When you're
you
learning,
need that. Yeah, definitely. Where you really need that regularity.
right?
But then I think after a while, you can start to weave it in and still have your set formal practices in some way, shape, or form. But you can also start to weave in, because if you're teaching a lot, I find it's better for me to regulate throughout the day rather than just have one one big regulation in the morning, say for 2 hours, but then by late afternoon I need
Right.
something else. I find it better to do shorter practices throughout the day in this season of my life. And I know that that will change, because there'll be another season where I will definitely have more free time, where I'll probably maybe just really focus on some deeper practice. And certainly if I'm learning something new, I'll
Mhm.
be integrating that. Integration actually, I think, is huge right now, thinking about it, for everyone, because we've done a lot of consumption without giving the time and space to actually integrate. And that's part of the embodiment aspect as well. Without it integrating into your life where you can absorb it and then work with it and play with it, and use it within your family or whoever, how is it impacting your life? How are these practices impacting your life? Are they making you more rigid? Are they making you less centered in some ways, which some practices can? A really strong Ashtanga practice would feel very wrong for me right now. In my 20s, I loved it, but it just would not feel right on my body right now. And that's not to say in a few years' time that actually that would change. I'm really open to not being stuck in the sense of, we're growing older, so it's this and this and this. No, let's be open, because I know, one of my dear friends who's just been over, she's 84, full of energy, like she could exhaust you, because she's just full of energy, and is defying these notions we have of what age means.
Yeah.
So I'm all about
I
that.
I
Let's
love
let's
what you're
defy a
saying.
few
Like,
things.
yeah, I love what you're saying about the regulation and weaving in how you regulate yourself throughout your day, that it doesn't have to be, and to ask yourself the question, like, are the practices making me rigid or strict, or like upset if I don't do it? Or am I making the practices that I have that are my regulation, self-regulation practices, actually livable for me? And then I also like that concept of integration too, because I think sometimes, we learn something, but are we really using it? And the concepts of like yoga or mantra or mindfulness, or even like sound healing, like walking through the woods or forest like you do, um like listening,
Yeah,
and then
listening
also
to.
applying that, right, to your day or to your relationships. I can just, I'm picturing you like, doing, in the kitchen, like letting your voice be free in whatever way
Mm,
it wants to be free, and how that
yeah.
is going to impact everybody in your household that's hearing you.
Mm,
And then you're
mm,
going to be whatever that might have you integrate some of your day or thoughts that you're having or working on,
yes.
being connected to your throat or your voice or different chakra points or
Yes.
energy points.
Yes.
So it's really great to hear how natural you've made these practices, because I think you're right. It's like, oh, we have to go to the gym to do our thing, or we have to go to the yoga studio to do our thing. But actually, no, you can do
Mm,
parts of this all the time as you need it.
yeah.
And that is like
Yes.
disconnecting to the external and really, really connecting with the internal. Like, what is it that you need today? What is the flow that you want to be in?
Mm,
And how can you
mm,
support that?
yes. Yeah. Very
Mhm.
much so. Coming back to center, coming back to center. And if you're working with clients throughout the day or sometimes in the evening, it's about always being in the work in some way, shape, or form as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I love it. I just feel like it's
Yeah.
so rich to talk to you, because I think um that people are really thinking about how they're using their energy, how they're giving their energy away, how they're, regrouping around things. So I think we're all being called to really um look at how we're doing things, like what's important to us
Mm,
now, how we're
yeah,
tuning into
yeah.
ourselves and our clients now. Where I think, it was a different pace life, I think, before COVID, because we were all much more integrated into the world. And maybe
Mm,
part of us regulating was commuting and, being in
yes.
person all the time. And that was just a part of how we also like had interactions, worked our
Mm,
um, practices into that and into that parts of the day, right? So like maybe it's on
mm,
the way home
mm,
that you're stopping and walking or moving or something like
definitely.
that, or in your car,
Yeah,
like
or
you
in your
said.
lunchtime. In the lunchtime, for example, I remember in London, I was working lots of different jobs while I was acting. And, if there's lunchtime, I'd always go out to the park. So I'd always go out to the park and just make sure I was just getting some outdoors, especially if I was working inside. So, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Great.
absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add to clients or people who are listening, or things that you feel like were that you didn't get to say?
Gosh, I've just, I think, look, there's so much to say. we could, uh, we could
Yeah.
carry on and on, but I think, what's most important is we don't put too much pressure on ourselves to be everything to everyone, be everywhere, and to follow a set thing because we've been told to. I think it's more and more important to be really listening into ourselves and what do we need, not just on an individual level, but on a collective level. This is so important. We've had a very individualistic society, and it needs to be more collective, so that when we're doing something for ourselves, we're doing it also for the collective as well. Because we're a whole planet, and more and more now, technology obviously and everything, we're really aware of what's happening across the planet. So in that sense, we're no longer just in our communities. I think people are wanting to come back into those communities, but we've got to take into account the whole. And in doing that, the first place to start is with yourself and in your family and then your community, and I think expand from there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're
Yes.
right. I think there is a individualistic sense, and then going more back into community, to because we have so much availability to know so much about what's going on everywhere,
Mm,
that we have to be very
yeah.
conscious that we are affected by all of that information that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
receive.
Of course.
Some of it's slowing it
Yeah.
down, but some of it's also doing our part, like as healers, to heal it. And sometimes
Yeah.
just healing yourself is, and your family is one of the ways you can contribute to that.
Yeah, it depends on the season of life that everyone's in. Yeah, I've just been through my mum dying, and that, that was a whole couple of years of, quite intense during a very intense time as well. And so you just got to give yourself time to process, to do what you can. But if you find that it's starting to really dysregulate, you have to keep coming back, because otherwise we're going out then as very dysregulated people, and that can potentially cause harm. And I
Uh-huh.
think, just the least harm we can do, starting in our own lives and then expanding out. I think that's the key, isn't it? We're driving towards, as much as possible, greater peace in the world, and it's needed more than ever now. And that starts with finding greater peace within yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good final statement, right? Finding peace within yourself.
Thank you. Thank you,
So thank
Susan.
you.
It's been
Yes.
so wonderful to talk with you.
So
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good to be connected. So I'm sure
Yes.
we'll talk
Yes,
again, but
definitely.
thanks for taking the
Yes.
time to talk to me now.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah.